We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a business, Mr. Beale.
Go on without me. Just go.
A good soldier never leaves a man behind.
Because I wouldn't give you 2 cents for all your fancy rules if behind them they didn't have a little bit of plain, ordinary, everyday kindness.
Life, finds a way.
Welcome to Silver Screen Biases, where we dig into a critically acclaimed movie and evaluate the truth claims within it. I'm Nelson.
This is Jeff.
And this is...
Cassie. Hi.
Hi, Cassie. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, what movie are we covering this week?
Princess Mononoke.
What year is that?
1997.
All right. Well, before we get into that, and we will come back to that, I want to take a moment to talk about our...
sponsor.
That's the one. The sponsor that we've had for the last several episodes, and I shouldn't have forgotten, Tuttle Twins. Specifically, I want to pitch the book Golden Rule by Tuttle Twins, or their episode 2 of their YouTube show, War of the Worms, both those specifically linked below, because I think they tie in well to today's episode.
Okay, how's that? How so?
I'm going to bring that full circle when we get to it.
Okay.
Both of those stories are telling the same story, and it's about how violence escalates. Retributive? Returning violence on violence escalates violence.
Okay.
Retributive violence, I think is the term. Anyway, I'll come back to that. But, link below, click on that. It knows that we sent you. Any purchases you make, we get a kickback. And we greatly appreciate that.
Yeah. It's good quality family content, educational, entertaining, wholesome entertainment. So
that's right. And they've got content for all ages, from toddlers to teens.
Yep.
And that's it.
Books,
all
YouTube shows. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Toddlers through to 18. Every age.
Yeah, if you're 19, it's not for you.
No content for you.
Yep.
Then you have to read real books.
Real books. No pictures.
No pictures. The saddest part of being an adult.
That was the worst, man.
That's why adults have children, is so that they can read.
They can do it again. Yeah.
The same books.
The same books.
20 times in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, howdy.
Yeah.
All right. Cassie.
Hello.
We are so lucky and happy to have you here. You are, correct me if I'm wrong, a big fan of Studio Ghibli.
Huge fan.
Okay.
And I pronounce it Ghibli.
Yeah.
And after your guys' Spirited Away podcast, I had to double check my resources because I'm like, oh no, have I been pronouncing it wrong this whole time? Because I'm a huge fan.
It's Ghibli.
And I'm okay with saying Ghibli, but I don't think Ghibli is necessarily wrong.
Nice.
All the videos I was watching today, prepping for this episode, they actually said Ghibli, and I was questioning myself as well too. I'm like,
yeah,
man. So yeah, no, I think either are okay, but I think Ghibli is the more correct one.
So the name technically comes from a few different sources. Miyazaki is a huge plane fan, like airplanes and stuff, which is why you see so many airplanes in all of his like newer movies and things. So the name could be inspired from an Italian airplane called the Ghibli, but that word also means I wrote this down. I didn't write it down. It also means like a fresh wind or something having to do with wind. So it could mean like a fresh animation style in the industry of animation.
Yeah.
Or it could just be that he liked that plane and he thought it was a cool name. So the plane is technically pronounced Ghibli, but he, being Japanese, pronounces it Ghibli, and the rest of his staff all say Ghibli. So.
I had a fact about this, but I'll throw it in right now just because we're already there. This is great. This movie specifically, Princess Mononoke, he had realized that he was using a lot of air flight, sky travel things within his previous creations, and so this is the only one of his that does not have any of that outside of like birds in the background.
Spirited Away doesn't?
Spirited Away does. Spirited Away was after this.
Also, I guess they
Spirited Away was after this. So
Away.
up to the point of 1997,
yeah.
He had used a lot of those images of planes flying.
Porco Rosso is all flying pigs.
So yeah,
as well as The Wind Rises.
So yeah, so I did not know that about the name Ghibli though. That's fantastic. So I love that.
I also like that she said that we're technically not wrong, which is as good as being right.
Yeah.
It's like the GIF thing, just pick one and go with it. Like
yeah.
It's nice.
As long as it's
nice
not
to be
Geif.
Right.
Just don't be dumb.
Yeah. Don't be that guy.
Oof, you're on the wrong podcast, Cassie.
But more than just being a Studio Ghibli or Ghibli fan, you are also somewhat of an expert, especially compared to Jeff and I, when it comes to art in general.
Yes.
For a while,
Say expert.
compared to
We will.
I mean-
100%.
I have 4 years of education in
Yeah.
art
Yeah.
education specifically. So I was an art teacher for 4 years. And in that, you learn so much about art, as in like just creating art with your hands, but also art as in how you look at art, how you think about art, how you talk about art. And that was primarily what I focused on in my classes because I taught at a high school level, which means you can really dig into stuff like that. So critical thinking, tearing something apart, going through it and really like looking at the metaphorical significance of things and the visual significance of interpreting whatever it is that you're looking at, right? Which is why I'm such a big Ghibli fan, honestly.
You're
like
on the right podcast.
his visual representations of conceptual stories are so good. Like it's just he's a master at showing you something with his art rather than just telling it to you. Like his story writing is also fantastic.
Yeah.
But the art is so much better at like communicating the things that he's trying to communicate, the themes and the feelings and the emotions and the concepts in his movies, which is it's really good.
she's already more qualified
Yeah.
than us to do this podcast.
This is great. This is going to take us next level.
All right.
It's fantastic.
Now, there are some questions that we ask all of our guests.
Yes. So I'll give them all three and then we can rehash them. But so just so you have them all to think about it. So we always ask, what's your political bias? What's your religious bias? And then we're adding one today.
That's right.
Which
fun.
is the most important one. What are your favorite movies? When you watch movies, what's your genre, or which we may have already
Or
tapped
singular. What's
into,
your singular
or
favorite
singular?
movie?
What's your favorite movie of all time? So political bias, religious bias, and favorite movie.
Okay. Political, my bias, I don't even know. It's like I try and stay out of it for the most part. Like my husband and I were known for being out of the loop in terms
Impressively.
of current events.
Like the amount of times that I've mentioned something that's been in the public conversation for several years even. And Dave is just like, what's that? That sounds interesting.
Tell me more about that, Nelson. No, you are our source of news, Nelson. We don't watch the news. We don't read news articles on the internet. We don't keep track of any of that really. And so it's hard for me to have specific opinions. I mean, I think I have hard opinions about specific things in politics, but I definitely don't attribute myself to any one name or group or side. I would say like I make my political decisions based on as many facts as I can gather, rather than one group thought or I'm not sure what the word is I'm looking for.
Yeah, no, I think
I'm tracking with you.
any given political movement probably isn't going to represent all of your political opinions well. Right.
So I just don't think I could describe where I fit.
You know, correct me if I'm wrong, but neither you or Dave vote, right?
We vote in the big elections.
Okay.
And when those do come up, it is kind of hard for me to make those decisions because I've stayed out of the loop for the whole year.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I do like a little bit of research before I get into it and try and see if I can see all the options in front of me. But I kind of wait, I guess, for the options to be whittled down for me. And then I pick from what's left.
From the terrible options that remain.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. And religious biases?
So I have been a Christian my whole life. I've grown up in non-denominational churches.
Okay.
Stuck with that for my whole life. Has I guess changed and developed as I have grown and developed, but definitely from the worldview of one God and his son Jesus, who provides salvation for all.
Amen.
Cool.
And your favorite movie?
Movie.
It's actually the hardest of the three
It
questions.
is the hard. Yeah.
Golly. I don't know. I mean, Ghibli films are up there.
Okay.
They're
Yeah.
so good. Any movie where visually it just is astounding, those get me real good. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. There's it was like one of those festival films for Sundance, I think. It's called The Kings of Summer.
I don't know it.
It's one of my most
I'm sorry,
favorite.
I'm a popcorn eating pleb. I don't know.
Believe
art
it or
house
not,
films.
one of the starring roles is Nick Offerman.
Oh, nice. I love
As
that guy.
well as Holly, what's someone from Community? She plays Annie in Community. I can't remember the actress's name.
I can't think of her, but I know the face.
She's in it as well. It's got some like pretty big actors, as well as I don't know if you know Rico from Hannah Montana.
I know what he used to look like when he was like 12.
He also is in the movie, and he is fantastic. It's a really good movie visually, and also it's a comedy, but has really good storyline and character development.
It's a live action or animated?
It is live action.
It's live
yeah.
action. Right on. Cool.
What's it titled again?
Kings of Summer.
Kings of
Highly
Summer.
recommend. It's so
Linked
good.
below.
When I think of movies that are like visually stunning, and this is just a left field question, but like, what's your thoughts of the movie Life of Pi? Have you ever seen it?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I read
'Cause,
the
like,
book.
I've
and
never
watched
seen it,
some of the
or
movie.
like I just know when that one came out, that one was like very much honored or lifted up because of its visualizations. I just didn't know. I've never seen it.
Interesting camera angles. I mean, like historical films. Like I think you guys are doing
Period
Citizen
pieces.
Kane or have done
Yeah.
Citizen Kane or
Very
something.
soon, actually.
Just some of the camera angles and then the shots that they take in those movies, like when they're really creative about the way that they visualize the scene, those grab my attention.
All I know about Citizen Kane is that there is a point in it where he's at like a restaurant and somebody calls the restaurant for him, and you watch the waiter answer the phone, walk over to him, which takes like 10 seconds, tell him, then he walks over, which takes like another 10 seconds. And it's like the single shot. And I saw one like film expert saying this is a result of theater being adapted to screen without really any thought about we can do things differently than we do it in the theater. So I thought that was
Interesting.
Single shots though are so cool, like the way that they can take you out of the story. Sometimes you're just because you become very aware of the camera when it doesn't cut anymore. There's that one movie about
1917.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I was about to ask you about it.
Oh,
whole-
that shot,
running scene.
that was
Yeah.
so good.
The whole movie is one shot.
well, not technically.
You're made to believe it was. You're made to believe it was filmed chronologically, but there's moments you can tell that there was.
But they
Did the whole 2
they take
hours
that
in
stuff.
one go.
That was a beautiful movie.
Yeah, incredible.
Lindsay hates wartime movies.
Right.
Hates them.
like
All-
Sound of Music.
Sound of Music. Yeah, pretty much any of those. Yeah. And we were in Columbus for the weekend, and we had went to go see one movie, but they had already removed it from IMAX. And I was like, Lindsay, I really want to watch an IMAX movie still. And 1917 was there.
Oh,
She
I'm
looked at
sure
me.
that
She's
was
like,
great.
"We're not doing this." Or I was like, "We're gonna do it." So
I
I made
made
her
an
sit.
executive
So I
decision.
saw that movie in IMAX, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Lindsay made me buy her things at the mall. Then afterwards,
That's fair.
as you know, because she sat through that, she hated it, but I loved that film.
Yeah.
And it was breathtaking.
It's in the top 250, and
It
I
is.
can't
Oh,
wait.
we're
to get
going to
to
be
it.
going through that for sure. Yeah.
Incredible
yeah,
movie.
Yeah. So, yes. Okay. So any other movie thoughts? Any other before we get into the movie of the episode?
I think I covered it.
Okay. Cool. Well, this is going to be fun. We're already off to a good start. Princess Mononoke. 1997, 2 hours and 14 minutes. And all of our discussion, and except for maybe some factual comments and stuff coming from production and stuff, I guess I can't speak for everyone. I watched the English dub version. So I did not watch the subtitles. So
I turned on the subtitles, and then the subtitles were a different
Right.
English translation, so I had to turn them back off.
right. So we may have watched a couple different versions, but I watched the English dub version.
The dub's got some great casting
yeah,
too.
yeah. I can bring that up here.
It's because Studio Ghibli partners with Disney, and so
Yeah.
Disney does their English voice casting. So it tends to be a lot of big name actors that
Billy
they get.
Bob Thornton.
And
Billy
they
Crudup,
do
Minnie
really,
Driver.
really a good job. I mean, they put a lot of production into
Jada
that
Pinkett
dubbing, so
Smith.
I don't see a difference in quality.
I didn't see anything pop up, and I didn't do a whole lot of deep dive into it, but we talked about it with Spirited Away. Specifically, it was the guy from Pixar, like, really went out of his way to get the English translation to match the lip movement, which is an incredible thing. I didn't see anything about that for this one.
But at the same time, I didn't see any moments where I'm like, that animated character's not saying what I'm hearing.
It never like takes you out of
no,
it.
I was fully immersed.
It's not like kung fu movies.
Yeah, and I think having this be the second anime movie I've ever seen, Spirited Away
Cassie
being the
has
first.
a thought on that.
It's in my notes.
Okay, and correct me if we'll get into that.
She says it's not anime.
Oh, well, let me finish my thought then. Let's get into that. like I was much more eager to watch this one, knowing how my experience with Spirited Away was.
Sure.
I was like, okay, this is not what I had expected, or like I didn't know what to expect. So I was very much excited about watching this one more so than I was Spirited Away. I liked both of them. I'll get into my opinions later, but yeah, I was very eager for this one versus initially watching Spirited Away, where I was like, I don't really want to do this. This is different, but I have learned and changed. So this is not an anime. Go on.
I wouldn't consider it to be. I think, honestly, I tried to like back myself up with facts before this because I know I have an opinion about it. And I was like, what's that opinion based on? Like classic critical thinking. And I Googled it and I was like, I could not find any hard definition of anime. So I'm like, you know what? I think it's got to be a fluid definition. I mean, it's something that has grown and evolved over so many years. Okay. I will say Miyazaki himself does not consider his films to be anime. So that's enough evidence for me to be on the right-hand side of that. I personally consider anime to be a artistic style as well as a storytelling style that comes from Japan, but not every single animation from Japan is anime.
Right.
Definitely.
Because by that
Japan,
definition, Animaniacs is anime. Because Animaniacs was mostly produced in Japan.
Was it really?
Yeah.
So
I love anime.
They outsourced all the drawing.
I love the Animaniacs.
It more refers to that very, very specific stylistic drawing of the big eyes and like the big head and the colorful hair. And it's like every anime you see might have an adaptation of that style, and the artist kind of brings their own personality into it. But there is definitely a formula that they are following to create those drawings. Sure. And most of animes are based on manga, comic strips. Yeah. Studio Ghibli is not based on any sort of comics. It's all from Miyazaki's head and his own story writing.
One big thing you see in anime, and you do see it in Studio Ghibli, but not as much, is like you'll have a single shot that might last for 5 to 10 seconds where the only thing animated on screen, the only thing that's not a still image is the mouth. The mouth moves and everything else is static. With Studio Ghibli, you don't see that as much. Most of the time, the whole face is animated. But they still do some things typical in anime, which is like you'll have, like a half-second segment on loop to illustrate something running or moving. Or you'll have like a prolonged shot where 90% of the image is static and only a few things are actually animated. So you do see that still with Miyazaki, but again, that's not a definition enough to qualify.
Right.
Is it or isn't
and there's
it
probably crossover with all the creators and the digital developers. Like, there's probably crossover from different studios and stuff with each project that lend their hands and stuff. But that's a fascinating perspective. And I would agree, like, these two movies that we've seen so far, like, are drastically different than, like, Pokemon. Like, and in my mind, before going into those, I just had them all in one category. Sure. So yeah, I don't disagree with you, Cassie. Like, I would say, like, these movies watch differently than what I had expected my idea of what anime was.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Cassie's also the largest anime fan we've had as a guest yet.
That's true. We need to get Johnny Martin.
And I'm not like that big of an anime fan. I'm definitely a Ghibli fan. I've had experience with anime for sure. But as far as like the looping and stuff, that's animation in general. Like taking a still picture and turning it into something that looks like fluid movement takes a really, really, really long time.
Absolutely.
And so you have to do those looping techniques. Every animation you ever see, every cartoon is going to have that looping because it's a shortcut to save time, to save money. Absolutely. Yeah. But I will say, again, one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of Studio Ghibli is because they have stuck to hand-drawn animation throughout its entire production history. They don't use any of the digital puppeting that a lot of Disney films nowadays use, where you create like a 3-dimensional character in a program and then you can kind of move it like a puppet, move its arms, move its legs, develop those loops that way. Ghibli has always done hand-drawn, whether it's on like a computer tablet with your hand or on paper with your hand, like in the older movies. They use the cells to create hand-painted backgrounds that are just every background scene in this movie, I would frame it and hang it on my wall.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Have you seen Klaus?
Yes. Yeah.
That's also hand-drawn, but hand-drawn in such a way as to look like it was CGI.
That's fun.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say on that.
Yeah. I so appreciate Ghibli's masterful artwork. Yeah. I mean, I'm an artist. I'm a fan of art. I wouldn't say I'm a fan of all art. Like, I can look at a piece of art and say, I don't like that.
Like a banana taped to a wall, for example. That's not art.
Sometimes I like those. Sometimes I like those.
I spent big money on that piece.
But every single thing that Ghibli makes. I love it. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
So the director of this film is who, Cassie?
Hayao Miyazaki.
Thank you. I butchered it. I think the
Gesundheit.
last movie. So a couple of things before we get into the nuts and bolts of this. This is the second Studio Ghibli film we've done on this
Yeah.
podcast.
Also,
This
the
is
second Studio Ghibli film.
Yes, correct. This is the first movie where we've had a return director. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that this is the first for us, like of having a second
Woman.
Nice.
That's true. Yeah, you're our second female guest. Yes. So this is a PG-13 movie, and then I got just a couple more facts before we get into some of our questions and stuff. So on the IMDb scale, it's an 8.4 out of 10. It's number 79 as of today's recording on the IMDb Top 250, number 79. On the Rotten Tomatoes scale, it's 93 tomato meter, 94 audience.
Wow.
Yeah. So those are the last things I wanted to
Very
hit
well received movie.
right before we get into the nitty gritty. Also we have the budget. So I've got two numbers for you.
Yeah.
The first one. Miyazaki started writing this in 1994, and it debuted in 97. So give or take a couple years of,
Production.
time lapse. Yeah. The budget was 2.35 billion yen.
2.35 or 23.5?
2.35 billion yen, or 23.5 million budget for the movie. What does that equate to today?
Well, 23.5 million US dollars today would be worth 42.85 million. So, almost doubled in what, 30 years?
Yeah.
Less than 30 years.
And as of the moment of 1997, it was the most expensive quote unquote anime movie made at its time of release.
Wow.
So it was the most expensive film of its kind within the genre that it.
That's
You
probably
could say animation.
Japanese animation.
Sure. That's probably due to its large runtime.
Yeah.
That's just more. Every second you add, that's 30 cells you have to animate.
Right.
And the labor of doing it by hand.
Yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but like 2 hours and 15 minutes.
2:14.
And you really start to feel it about halfway.
Yeah.
I felt like the movie slowed down in the third act, but
I don't know what you're talking about. I got another fact. I don't know if this is backed by any evidence, but I will say
a fact without evidence.
this is the Princess movie with the highest number of decapitations. And I would love for you to find me wrong on that.
I believe that.
I don't want that fact to be wrong, so I will not look into that.
Jen and the kids watched it today,
Oh,
and I just got a text message. That guy just got decapitated,
Yeah.
and then a couple seconds later,
Very quickly.
that guy's arms got cut off.
Yeah.
I don't think we like this.
I would not watch it with your kids, I don't think. They're a little too young.
They saw it today. I didn't have a chance to discuss it with them though.
I was ready for it though. After watching Spirited Away, there was some blood scenes and like that the dragon that was
Sure.
like I knew to expect some graphicness. So
It's definitely more than Spirited Away.
Well, it
as
was.
far as,
I
like,
would say it's different than Spirited
It's
Away because I
different,
knew we were going
yeah.
to talk about this. But like with the decapitations, the severed limbs, they're like bloodless severed.
yeah.
And then in the points when there's a lot of blood, there's no serious visible
Right.
injuries, and I thought that was interesting.
I think the goriest moment in that movie was when they were up close at the boar at the beginning, and he said his final phrase and then
Rotted.
dissolved.
Oh, it's so good.
No,
I thought that was the most graphic of the whole movie. So
I think it was towards the end where the blind boar is like turning to a rage monster, and because he's just not only is he very wounded, he's just gross looking.
yeah.
One thing that Miyazaki does really well is gross.
Yeah.
He nails gross.
In a beautiful way.
I thought
real
Spirited Away
gross
was
way.
grosser.
No, absolutely. Yeah, there was
but yeah, I agree. Yeah, he
the
does it
gross-
well.
Yeah.
The bathhouse and all that stuff was the gross monster, the whatever that sludge monster was,
Yeah.
sludge spirit. That was
It was River Spirit.
yeah. That was. He got a point across for sure.
Yeah.
So that's all the fun facts going into it. So, biases. Did you guys come up with any biases or any like themes or anything that you guys pulled from this? What do we got? What's the first topic at hand here?
Well, my first thing, actually, I'm not going to do biases just yet. I got to think about.
You realize we're a
historicity.
podcast of biases,
Huh?
right?
What?
What you got?
I got to think about the historicity here.
Okay.
So I paused almost immediately in this movie when I saw him on what I thought was a deer or elk, and looked it up because I know that it's common in fantasy, especially Eastern fantasy, to have people riding deer or elk. Deer can be trained to be ridden, but they are too, quote, fine-boned, so they can't carry much weight. Elk can be ridden and have pretty strong bones, but they haven't been domesticated, so they're very difficult to train. What he's actually riding is called a serow, S-E-R-O-W, which is a goat indigenous to India. To Asia, not India, specifically. And he's riding a red serow. Red serows are from Myanmar, which is east of China. The Amishi, which is the tribe he came from, it was an actual people group from Japan that was eradicated 500 years before this movie takes place. So, in the movie, they escaped from tyranny, and they've been living in secrecy for 500 years, and he has to travel back west to their homeland. Basically, there's historical, like that's rooted in history. And I think it's really interesting how Miyazaki goes out of his way to root his films in Japanese and Asian history. And that's all I had to say on that.
Yeah.
Cool. So what's the first topic of conversation? What's some of the things you came up with that you think was a message that was being proclaimed or a truth that was being proclaimed in this movie?
I would say one of the main overarching themes is hatred and how hatred affects you. The word hatred was used in the movie lots and lots of times. Several people made specific claims about hatred and what it does to you. The main one that comes to mind is that Ashitaka's curse is that the hatred will consume his body and then kill him. Yeah. So metaphorically, I think that's pretty clear what the movie is claiming about hatred in general as it refers to Ashitaka for sure.
Well, Ashitaka gets that monologue when the wolf girl and the industrialist woman are fighting. He jumps in, splits them up, and he says, "Look, everyone, this is what hatred looks like. This is what it does when it catches hold of you. It's eating me alive. Very soon now it will kill me. Fear and anger only make it grow faster." And I think that that's some interesting truth claims there, that fear and anger make hatred grow faster, that hatred will eat you alive and kill you. Your thoughts? Do you agree with that claim?
I'm leaning towards yeah. I guess just initially, and it's also not a concept that's like, it's also a concept that's in a lot of other films that I feel like I'm familiar with. Like it's not a new topic of conversation of which I've never thought about before. Like you could say the same thing about like it's in Star Wars and stuff like that. Same, the darkness overtakes you and type of scenarios. Like I would say, yeah. I mean, yeah, I could, yeah. A lot of people's demises have been because of
hatred.
Yeah.
There's that quote. It's hatred is swallowing poison and waiting for the other person to die. Or no, a grudge is swallowing poison and waiting for the other person to die.
Insightful.
I think so.
I think Miyazaki has always been passionate about the theme of war, and many of his movies are very anti-war.
Yeah.
He's very much like, he doesn't like war, he doesn't like the fighting, he doesn't like the hatred, he doesn't like the violence.
Yeah.
And what I love is that I don't think he shoves it down your throat in the movie. Mm-hmm. He's very, very good at raising questions with the movie rather than making statements. So in terms of biases, in terms of truth claims, right? Like, I think you can tell what side he's on, but he does provide you with multiple perspectives on this idea. So from Ashitaka's point of view,
characters from
yes,
yeah, he doesn't strawman really anybody.
Yes, and it's very equal footing. You're right. Yeah. So Ashitaka, absolutely anti-hate, anti-war, anti-violence. Yeah. But then you get into Irontown, and oh gosh, what's the main lady's name?
Lady Eboshi.
Eboshi. Thank you.
She's awesome.
She's pretty cool.
I like her.
So she believes that hatred or violence is justified when it comes to protecting the ones that you love, or trying to stand up for the smaller man, right?
Yeah.
The lepers in her little attic. And then Mononoke as well believes that vengeance and hatred are justified when something you love has been hurt or harmed. Like, it's okay to take vengeance in those scenarios.
Yeah.
And each of those characters has some parts of them that are right and some parts of them that are wrong, right? And you can kind of look at this movie and evaluate each of those and decide what you think at the end of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, on that, because you mentioned Miyazaki, he's anti-war. from what I've seen from a lot of the movies that I've watched of his. He's pretty anti-war, and he's very good at sneaking in a single line here or there that kind of is going to stick with you and make you think. One of the ones I wrote down here is what's the main character's name?
Ashitaka.
Ashitaka brings those two guys back to Iron Town, and the guy with the broken limbs sees his wife, and his wife's response is, "It's never the guards that die." And I think that's it's similar to I'm blanking on the band. I need the name of the band, right? 1 second.
Just sing it.
No. you know better than that, Cass.
Come on.
You know obviously good. System of a Down.
Oh.
System of a Down has a song BYOB,
Yes.
which is Bring Your Own Bombs. And not the chorus, maybe the bridge. There's a line in it which is, "Why don't presidents go to war? Why do they always send the poor?" Right. So this woman's
It's a great song.
It's a really good song. And this woman's frustrated because we send all these men, all these ox drivers, and soldiers. The soldiers seem to be fine, and it's the ox drivers that die. So why is it never the guards that die? Which also makes you wonder if maybe the guards are somewhat authoritarian and totalitarian. We never see any overt tyranny in the movie. In fact, Lady Eboshi is pretty benevolent as a leader.
Benevolent.
Yeah.
Describe that word for me real quick.
The opposite of malevolent.
Benevolence hands off, right? Like she's kind of like,
so like benevolent is when she does good things for the people that she rules. Malevolent would be like if she does bad things.
She does make harsh decisions, though. Like when they are on the mountainside and the wolves get the ox drivers and they fall down the cliff, the guy's like, should we go down there for them? She's like, no, they're dead. Let's go.
Yeah.
And they weren't dead, obviously.
Yeah.
But she did make that decision for
Let's
everybody.
take the living back to... And then, so she's very cold and calculated at times. But, we see that the majority of the hard labor is done by women who were bought out of brothels.
Yeah.
So these women had contracts at brothels. She bought those contracts. The women make it clear that they're happy to be doing this job instead. Then she takes a bunch of lepers and teaches them how to smith and makes them gun manufacturers. My economic assumptions, right? She doesn't have to be an altruist. She doesn't have to be benevolent. She could be doing those things purely because it's economically viable, right? I imagine buying out a contract of a woman in a brothel is probably cheaper than hiring somebody, right? And lepers have no other income. So if you can teach them to do something, like it's pretty low cost. So it's not exploitation because she's giving them something that they need. But at the same time, I'm sure she's saving money. And they also hint at that the jobs the women are doing are jobs that men should be doing, right? So there's a bit of stigma there too.
There's a whole woman versus man thing in this movie.
There's a lot of
very
that.
strong.
Very strong. But yeah, very anti-war. Very obviously anti-war. That's actually why I listed Golden Rule and War of the Worms from Tuttle Twins. One of the lines in War of the Worms is the way towards peace is for blowback to cease, right? So if you return violence with violence, it's only going to beget more violence. And that's definitely a trend that we see in this movie. A trend we see in the real world as well. He's just echoing it here. He's not inventing that. And then when Lady Eboshi brings out two women, they want revenge for husbands killed by your wolves. Miyazaki's kind of criticizing this violence justifies further violence, right? Because that's the claim Eboshi's making, but I think it's obvious that Miyazaki himself disagrees with that. I've run out of things to say.
Those are all good things.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
On the theme of hatred, I think there's one more character that provides a different perspective on hatred and violence, and that is the old man on stilts. He, in the fire with Ashitaka, was talking about, I think, war and violence, and at some point he's just like, the world is dying anyway. Like, everyone's dying from sickness, from starvation. You win some, you lose some. I think Ashitaka was expressing guilt over killing those samurai, and he's like, the world's gone to the pits anyway, like, it's fine. So he has a very apathetic view of hatred and violence, and I think he's definitely more of an opportunist of if these people want to kill each other, that's fine, I'm gonna profit from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got a few of his lines here, specifically the one you were referencing. He says, you cannot change your fate, No, that's not him. That's the
Old lady.
Old lady. No. That man says, "You say you're under a curse, so what? The whole world is. Everyone dies, from brothel girl to emperor." And then later, he says, "Everybody wants everything. That's just the way the world is, but I might actually get it."
So I got a fact here from IMDb.
Sure.
Mononoke translates to angry or vengeful spirit. Nice. And Haim, so the original Japanese title is Hime. Okay, yeah. Mononoke Hime, right? Is
yes.
that okay?
Hime
I didn't know if
princess.
it. Yeah. So I'll read this word for word here again. This is from IMDb. Hime is the Japanese horrific word that means princess. So it's not just a
honorific.
Honorific, yeah.
I was like, it's just princess. There's nothing scary about it.
I can't read real, yeah. But Mononoke means angry or vengeful spirit, and then Japanese Haime means princess.
Hime.
And Hime,
it's okay.
Japanese is hard. It's not even English. But yeah, so just like I think even just within the title, I think you get that that connection of like emotion for anger or hatred, or just like you just from the very beginning, you're getting that. Especially if you knew the Japanese language, that Mononoke is not a positive word,
right?
It's not a hopeful word.
Yeah.
It can. I mean,
Princess of Rage,
right? So I thought, yeah.
Or Princess of Spirits. I think I looked it up as well. Mononoke, it is a word for spirits, but more specifically like vengeful spirits. So it's kind of like she's the princess of the spirits, but these spirits in particular are upset about things. Ashitaka, I looked it up, means brighter tomorrow. So he is the optimist of the storyline, which makes sense. He's trying to get people to stop with all the violence.
I like that. That's fun. It's kind of cool because so San, the San or San?
I think it was San.
Okay, San, the wolf princess. Like she's essentially like the avenger for the nature spirits and stuff. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Now that we're talking, like I'm kind of putting that together. Like she's kind of like the human representative that's defending them. That's fun.
Everybody in the story is getting revenge.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Well, yeah.
Actually,
yeah.
except for Jiro.
Yeah.
Jiro?
Or the Stilts guy.
I don't remember the old guy. I just call him Stilts guy. Yeah. That could be.
Everybody in the movie is getting some kind of vengeance except for him. Eboshi's getting a vengeance on the spirits and on the men that preceded her in Irontown. Ashitaka, is that right? Ashitaka is getting revenge on the boar that cursed him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's out for revenge. I wouldn't say that that's his motivation.
He's out to save his town.
He's left his town. At this point, town is gone.
And he got banished too.
Yeah.
Like they said, you're dead to us.
Yeah.
Don't even like.
He's done with the town. I think he's more curious about the cause of the curse, trying to get the curse lifted so he can live. But then also, like, once he gets to the town, he's more interested in kind of stopping the violence that he finds there, because that's what caused his curse in the first place. It feels more of a protective, like, I don't want anyone else to get this curse. I have this curse and I need to put a stop to it. So I need to find what's causing it and stop all of that, rather than get revenge on the people who put it on me. Because he tried to kill Eboshi. Remember, his arm got all wiggly and stuff. And she's like, does your right arm want to kill me? And he's like holding it back. Like, that's not what he wants. That's what his rage wants. But that was given to him from the curse. But he specifically is separated from his rage.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
I like to watch Nelson contemplate.
Think through something. Yeah.
He's just... it's a beautiful sight.
Yeah, and I don't know. Lady Eboshi, I think, is a really fascinating character because she comes to this town that's a struggling iron town. She, through gut and guile, rises to the top. She funds defense for the iron. The iron's in high demand around the country, and she's managed to make it safer to ship it and deliver it and to produce it. And she's buying up brothel contracts to run the furnaces. She hires lepers to make rifles. She's innovating better weapons, as we see in the movie, to defend against the animals and samurai. She says at one point that her preference is to cut down the trees because it kills the spirits without having to kill the spirits, like weaken the spirits without killing them. And she sees that as a more altruistic path to limiting the spirits. And I thought that was really interesting. Like of course, everybody sees themselves as the hero of their own story, but like I feel like the movie paints her as a villain briefly and then very quickly makes you sympathetic to her.
Well, I think that's why like Miyazaki's raising questions rather than making statements. Like you see her as like, oh no, what is she doing that's causing the damage to the forest? And then you see, oh, she's protecting people. Yeah. So I feel like the question that's being raised in that scenario is violence justified when you are protecting someone who can't protect themselves or anything like that, right? Like that's the whole idea behind war. And I think Miyazaki asks that question in a lot of his films is like this reasoning for war, this justification for war, like is that justified? Is that enough to protect someone that you love? Is that okay then to put harm and damage on someone else? And I don't know if he fully answers that question in this movie. I think that's at least left a little bit up because the war doesn't necessarily end at the end of the movie. Like they kind of, they have this explosion of violence to the point where Irontown realizes that they were all going to die. Yeah. Every single one of them was about to die, and they need to change their ways so they don't get in that situation again. So I think they're on the mend, but it's not like they decided to stop the violence.
Well, her last line in the movie is that she's going to rebuild Irontown better.
Right.
Now, that might just be a poor translation, but from our translation, there's nothing explicit that says, I'm not going to make iron. Yeah. I'm not going to mine and cut down trees as needed. Miyazaki in a lot of his movies has I think, an unnuanced false dichotomy of innovation and technology versus the natural world.
Yeah.
Sure. But some of his movies are very like technology pro.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this one I would say is more like innovation and technology is destroying nature, which is a bad thing.
Yeah.
But then later movies, absolutely innovation and invention is a wonderful thing that's doing great things.
That's actually the initial theme that I picked up on watching this. Was I mean, I've loved the conversation you guys just had. Like, for me, the most prominent thing that I took away initially was human dominance over nature. Essentially, like, it's not man versus man, but man versus woods and stuff. And what's the value of us? What did I write down here? Humanity versus nature or earth domination. And you see it in a couple different ways. The iron bullet, because the whole episode initially starts by that one animal getting shot.
Yeah.
Or not shot. That one boar had that iron in him. It's like, so, and that's the reason that triggered his cause of events was because of a man-made structure that shot him, turned him evil. It's like, so for me, it was I thought this whole movie was kind of like WALL-E. Like that was the perspective I was watching because that was the first thing that triggered my thoughts. Mm-hmm. And so I was seeing it through that the whole time was, okay, this is kind of like a Go Green movie.
Yeah. I'd agree.
But after hearing what I was like playing it back in my head and listening to you guys talk, I was like, yeah, it was just as much about war and anger as it was those things, but I missed those because I was watching all the symbology of nature versus humanity.
For sure.
It's like,
I think that's absolutely a theme of the movie.
It's incredible. Like that you can have all those things
Layers,
it's fantastic.
I'll get you some more DVDs, guys. I've got a few of them.
Yes.
If you have DVD players.
Well, DVD, I can't even spell it.
The man versus nature thing, I think the movie raises this value of life. Mm-hmm. And I think it also raises the question, like, what life is valuable? Mm-hmm. Because to Eboshi, her people are more valuable than the nature. And then to Mononoke...
Even if we... Like, the movie doesn't explicitly say if she's altruistic or not, right? And so even if it's purely as they're a valuable resource...
Sure.
Like, she's defending their lives because of her own self-interest, the end result is still that she's protecting lives.
Right. She's choosing people over the spirits and over the nature, and Mononoke is choosing the spirits and nature over humanity, and Ashitaka is the only one coming in here saying, like, no, both are valuable. You need to protect both. So I think that does raise the question of, like, is some life valued over others? Is it okay for you to choose some life over others in order to motivate your decisions? And I guess what qualifications do you need to be able to rank something above something else? Mm-hmm. I'm really good at asking questions. I'm not as good at answering them.
So let's presume that there is a Princess Mononoke sequel, right? Where it leaves off with Lady Eboshi. She's saying that we're going to do it better. and we also see the spirits just been returned to life. A lot of greenery is returned. The people of Irontown probably have a different lot on life and respect for nature, likely just as a result of experiencing this. Any kind of path forward that's going to still result in the production of iron, right? Because she plans to rebuild, while still keeping in balance with the spirits and the forest, is going to require negotiation. What's the word? Compromise, and likely some form of contract.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I always do this, but this is a really great like microcosm of like the theoretical sequel of this movie is a great microcosm of why property rights can solve environmental issues, right? Because this land, the forest, is the property of the spirits, and so Lady Eboshi, if she wants to move forward, she's going to have to negotiate with them, and it's going to be on their terms. And if at any point she is exploiting or being exploitative or causing too much pollution, like we already have seen what the repercussion of that's going to be, and it's going to be war. So I just think it's really interesting that like that top-down solution. We were proposed two top-down solutions. One is industrialization is going to win. The other one's the spirits world's going to win. And the result of that is just pure violence, and that's not working. So it's going to have to be some give and take. Yeah. If
I can bounce back off that a little bit, like there was another kind of sidestep of something that I was observing, and initially the word came to mind was genocide, but I don't think that's correct, but that's what I wrote down in my notes. But it was, we see this town of Irontown that we hear that they got driven out of, they got driven out of where they were before, and like they're the last of their people.
Not Irontown. Mishi Village.
That's right. But then in that same breath, we see them driving out the spirits of the land, the nature spirits driving them out. So it's that kind of like evil begets evil scenario that we were talking about earlier. Just like they were hurt by someone and they know what it feels like to be pushed out, secluded, but then they're doing the same thing to real tangible spirits that they can see. Like they can literally see them. Like, so it's not even it's an imaginary thing. Like, oh, they're there. Just trust. Like you can see the people that you're affecting, these spirits you're affecting. You can tangibly see it, but yet that still wasn't enough for them to go.
A bit of manifest destiny there,
right? And so, like, and I'm reading a book right now. I'm reading a biography about Andrew Jackson.
Yeah. Oh,
one of the presidents.
I like that guy.
Yeah, and
I'm shaking my head no for the listeners.
I'm in the series of his life right now where he was interacting with the Indians, the Native Americans.
Which phase of his life? Because he did it from a young man
through
his presidency.
That's true. This was during the presidency.
Okay.
And just how for him, it was the nation of America was more important than preserving the people that were already there, that had already existed. So yeah, so this is ringing some bells just from some personal reading I'm doing stuff. And so like that was something else I picked up on, was not necessarily nature versus nurture, but just humanity versus a different type of humanity that's now valuing which one, just because you were here first, but we're stronger, or like we're more advanced. Like we're I was about to say the Dewey Decimal System. What's the dude that evolution?
Darwin.
There we go. Not Dewey.
Survival of the fittest.
Not the library guy. The other guy. Yeah. So you see a lot of that. It's like, we see that happen, but does that mean it's right?
I will say on Jackson, there is some dispute amongst historians whether he did what he did to protect the natives or to exploit them.
Yeah.
Right? Because there is a case to be made that he did this out of I want to protect you, protect your culture, and protect you from us.
Right.
And we're expanding.
But it's safe to say what he did was not protective to him. Whether his intentions were true or not.
Yeah.
It was
the result was millions of dead.
Yeah. So
without a doubt.
Yeah.
But that's kind of actually an example of road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Right. So yeah. So just interesting. That was just another. I don't know if I necessarily have where it lands on it in the movie, but that was a big theme that I picked up on, was just this idea of like pushing people out of what was rightfully theirs or who was there first or type of situation. Yeah.
There's a line in this, and I think it's another good example of Miyazaki being able to take one word to really kind of poke and prod and mock some standard thinking, especially with war. I can't remember what Ashitaka was doing at the time, but somebody says, whose side is he on anyway? Right? And it's this very binary thinking. Either you're on our side or you're on their side. There is no third option, right? And to make it relevant to today's politics, world politics, Putin was provoked into war with Ukraine. His actions towards Ukraine are of themselves indefensible, but they didn't happen in a vacuum. It's not like he just woke up one day and chose violence. It was like, no, there was plenty of behavior that provoked this response. It was a rational decision, but no less an evil one. And so when people point that out, oftentimes they're like, oh, you're on Putin's side. Why are you on their side? Why are you defending Ukraine? It's like, no, it's never quite that simple. And with Ashitaka, it's not quite so simple of, I'm on your side, I'm on their side. Ashitaka even was like, I want the best for both peoples, even if that's going to mean less power for the people at the top of both sides, right?
Well, I think, that line is said multiple times by both sides.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, Mononoke also says, oh, you're on their side then. Like, once he starts doing something to protect the people instead of the spirits. And then Eboshi, constantly, whose side are you on? Or you're on their side. Like, they keep attributing that to Ashitaka. They keep putting him in that box of, you're in the spirit side or you're on our side, or it has to be one or the other. Yeah. Sure. And I think that theme of that side versus side, I think it raises that traditional storytelling concept of good versus evil in the sense of that's what you want as a viewer in the movie. You want to know who's good and who's evil. Bad. Who am I rooting for? Who am I rooting against? And Miyazaki does a really good job of not letting you do that. You can't pick at any point. They both have good sides and they both have evil sides.
He did that in Spirited Away. Again, that's the only other movie I've seen of his so far, but like there was stuff in there where you're like, oh, that person's definitely the bad guy. And you're like, oh, okay, maybe not.
Yeah.
Like, like there's multiple characters in that movie where at first you think they're one and then it's the other, or they're both. They're good and bad. They have different values and in moments they can be helpful, in moments they're destructive. Like
they're all sympathetic characters. Yeah.
The only unsympathetic group within the movie is the samurai.
Yeah, which we don't get much from them.
So it's not explained in the movie, but the intended audience of Japanese children would know some of that history, which is these were in this era of Japanese history, these guys are no longer they're basically like feudal warlords, and they're really not a whole lot more than just bandits,
like pirates.
Yeah. So basically every time there was a regime change in Japan and a new emperor was in charge, all of the warlords that had fealty to the old emperor kind of like, well, we have to redraw our boundaries and resettle these things. So for most of Japanese history, it was endless feudal wars. And this movie takes place in roughly the 16th century. Yeah.
Which is like between 13 and 1500, right? Like I heard like there's a couple timestamps or there's a couple things in the movie that there's a YouTube video I watched that talks about like it's anywhere from 1300 to 1500, which 1500 would be 16th century, right? Or do I have that backwards? I'm terrible with because the century is not the number that we're on. Like
I guess one above.
We're 21st century and we're in 2000. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. So I just Googled it because I want to make sure that we get it right.
Correct.
Princess Mononoke is set in the late Muromachi period of Japan.
Nailed it.
Approximately 1336 to 1573 AD. And the Muromachi period is a division of Japanese history running from 1336 to 1573. Period marks the governance of the Muromachi or Ashikaga shogunate, which is officially established in 1338. Blah, blah. Yeah, so again, this is one of the many times where there was a shogun, S-H-O-G-U-N, was a warlord, and anybody that like the top military under a shogun were his samurai. So when we're talking samurai in this era, it's really just it's not a whole lot different than a bandit.
Right.
In later eras, the samurai were pretty well united, and it was all the royal guard were samurai. And then in even later eras, the samurai were like ronin. Are you familiar with the term ronin? So like they were like these elite
Ronin.
they were like these elite soldiers. These elite soldiers who just like went around trying to find each other to be the last one.
Right.
So, Japanese, like I'm not much of a, I'm not all that interested in Asian history, but the Japanese shogunate history era stuff is wild.
Yeah.
So, thinking of the side versus side stuff that we've been talking about, my expertise is in the visual. And I said before, Miyazaki's really good at telling his stories visually, not necessarily through the dialogue and story, but just the way that his characters are animated.
Yeah.
And that whole good versus evil thing, each of his characters has animations of them where they look beautiful and pure and innocent. The wolves running down the mountains, they're white.
Very graceful.
They look like angels. Like in the terrain around them, they're so contrasted with how white and how bright they are. They look beautiful. But then you get close to them and they bare their teeth and they have those red eyes and the red gums and the sharp teeth, and they're like, oh, okay, thought this was a good thing. Now it kind of looks kind of scary. So like you see that visually and it makes you question emotionally how you feel about that character. And then the same thing with all the people. Eboshi has generally a nice demeanor when you first meet her, but then at some point she like does this like evil cackle and her face kind of distorts a little bit. She's got this like evil smile to her and you're like, oh, maybe she's a villain. I'm not really sure. But I think Miyazaki does a really good job of incorporating the color red in almost every single character. And I think red is traditionally a symbol for violence and for anger and for rage, also for passion. So could be taken either way there.
I think there's a very close relation between rage and passion.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could say that with these characters as well.
Yeah.
But the color red is incorporated in every single character, in the wolf's eyes and in Mononoke's face mask thing. Ashitaka has a red cap on for most of the movie.
The first spirit at the beginning with the worm-like creatures,
right?
The two red eyes,
rage worms and the red eyes. Yeah. Boshi has those like bright red lips.
And the mice had red eyes.
Yep.
Even the old guy on stilts has like a red headband
That's
or something.
Yeah.
Interestingly,
and the shogunate all have red flags.
Right.
That's fascinating.
Well, that is Japanese. I think they were Japanese flags, weren't they?
No.
They had dots on them.
They did have dots on them. Yes, that is
That's
true.
as far as my flag knowledge goes.
So the Japanese flag, the current Japanese flag, is a white field with a single red dot that represents the rising sun. And then the shogunate that we saw in Princess Mononoke was a white field with two red dots. So it's not quite a Japanese flag.
Do either of you guys watch The Big Bang Theory?
I haven't for many years.
I never finished it, but Sheldon Cooper, one of the main characters, he has a YouTube channel, fictional YouTube channel, where it's just him talking about flags. So if we ever collabed with
there is, and I'm going to link this below because I think everybody should watch it. There was a TED Talks of a guy that has a podcast, 99% Invisible. Have you heard of 99% Invisible, Cassie?
No.
It would be so up your alley. It's a podcast about design and how good design is 99% invisible. You never notice it. And when it's bad, you do. Like when a doorknob's not where it's supposed to be, you notice, right? Because that's bad design. And one particular area of design that the host is fascinated by is flags. So he did a TED Talk on what makes a good flag and what makes a bad flag. And it is fascinating.
Yeah, link that below. I'd love to listen to that.
It will be linked below. It's so good.
That's fun. Flags.
So,
big fan.
I don't know if it means anything. I was trying to rack my brain. I'd be curious what you guys thought. But at the end of the movie, Ashitaka loses his red cap.
Yeah.
Right when his elk gets shot in the bum, and the poor thing is injured, and he's so sad. He's fighting the guys that shot the elk. His hat falls off.
Yeah.
And then for the remainder of the movie, he doesn't have it. So me, being the color symbolism person that I am, I'm like, what's happened? Has he lost his rage? Has he gone through some kind of character change at this point?
Right.
And I couldn't really land on anything other. I mean, he's been a peacemaking character the entire movie. But I guess I just wondered if anything changed at that point in time. Maybe it's like his family got injured now Now he has stakes in the game. This is the one thing that he's brought with him that he has had a personal relationship with in this whole story. And now that thing has been attacked.
Yeah.
So at that point, maybe he made that decision of, I'm not going to take vengeance. I'm not going to let rage take over me. Even though you have injured this thing that I love, I'm still going to go for peacemaking. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
I think if there is intentional symbolism there, and with Miyazaki, it wouldn't be a huge surprise if there was. I think that's a pretty astute observation of what it could be.
Okay.
One thing that I noticed with the hat is that at one point in the movie, he gets a cut on his cheek.
Mm-hmm.
And later in the movie, there's a scene where he's talking, and there's a black line on his cheek and a notch out of the hood where the sword would have cut his cheek and cut the hood. And I was like, that's like that level of attention to detail and continuity is something that I love in animation in general. Because animation, they spend so much time in the production, a lot of those things don't fall through the cracks. Whereas in a live action thing, it's a lot easier to have continuity errors where like in one shot, half the steak is eaten, and in the next shot, most of the steak is eaten, right?
Right. I watched an anime one time. You can cut this if you need to. But it drove me crazy because like episode, 5 of the anime, the main character gets his ear cut off. And then for the remainder of the anime, he has an ear. And it drove me nuts. It was like a huge part of his character that it was cut off.
That would bother me.
Oh my gosh.
There's been so did you ever watch Firefly, the TV show?
No.
Strongly recommend it.
Negative.
The show never made it past a single season. Fox aired it and canned it immediately. Part of the reason why it didn't do so well.
Wait, didn't it come back though? Didn't like the sci-fi or something bring it back?
No, Joss Whedon, who wrote and directed it, made a movie that was supposed to kind of like wrap it up. The fan base is very split on the movie Serenity. But anyway, when Fox aired the show, they had all the episodes and then aired them, but they aired them out of order. And so a lot of people, like, I think that had a big impact on viewership because, like, things just didn't quite flow right because if you watch the shows in order, there's a really good continuity through that for a season. If you watch them in the order that they got aired, it's like it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And continuity is important to me, and that's all. And end of rant.
Yes, Miyazaki is very good. You guys have some kind of visual medium for your podcast, right? I mean, you have the social medias and stuff.
Correct.
If you can, I would say like post some stills from Mononoke, like anything you can. I mean, just the level of unnecessary texture and unnecessary detail in these backgrounds.
100%.
Just like a 2-second scene that never comes back. The amount of time they spend creating just a view of like leaves and grass and forest. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's so ridiculous.
I'll make sure to email our social media coordinator for that. One thing that I think is really interesting in Miyazaki films, and he didn't do it in this one, but he kind of did. So something that's in almost every Miyazaki film is an old woman with a massive nose and a big bun in her hair and a wart on her face.
Oh, there's definitely one in this one. She's got a bun. I don't know if it's a
she
wart.
Doesn't have a big wart. Like,
okay.
So the old lady, the oracle in the Emishi village, isn't quite the typical Miyazaki old lady, but the character that Billy Bob Thornton voices later has that big wart on his face that's typical of Miyazaki films. And I'm curious, like in the 90s, how common it was for old people in Japan just to have great big warts on their face, or if this is like just a thing he does.
It's probably just, I mean, it's not in every film of his, absolutely. His more serious, dramatic films, I'd say, are less cartoonized in that way. Is that cartoonized? Like Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away.
Castle has somebody with a great big wart.
This one, they all have the old lady. They all have the old lady trope. But at Grave of the Fireflies, no.
I've not seen that one yet.
I don't think Porco Rosso does.
I don't know about Porco Rosso. What's the one with the cat?
The Cat Returns?
Well, there is that one. I was thinking a different one.
Kiki's
Delivery Service. Both of those have an old one with a big wart.
Do they?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Did he do Ponyo?
Yes.
Was there a fish with a wart?
But what he does do consistently in his movies is he tells them through the eyes of children.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. I mean, it's just, I think he has a very high regard.
Fireflies?
Yes.
I know it's Ghibli, but
did Miyazaki specifically? I think he had a hand in it. I'm not sure if he's listed as the official director for that one. There are a few that he's not really listed as, but still his partner. Like, he's very close
Isao
relationship
Takahata.
with them.
So all of Ghibli is either Miyazaki or Takahata.
I'd say most of it is both of them. Who gets
really?
credited with the direction? I'm not entirely sure what decides that, but I think they founded the company together.
Interesting.
And then their main composer, Joe Hisashi, something like that. He does most of the soundtracks.
I will say, and again, I'm just comparing it because I've only seen the two. Spirited Away, I was captivated by the music of Spirited Away. This one, not so much.
What?
The music of this, like, no, it wasn't bad. No, Cassie, I'm not saying it was bad, but this one, like, and that was one of the things I was looking for, because that was when Spirited Away ended, I was like, man, that was like, just like, it was a good experience. This one was like visually stunning, like that was, but just music, I was like, music was okay.
The music was very much taking a back seat to the visuals and story in this. Not that it was bad, it's just
still
like
great.
The music was a main character in Spirited Away.
It didn't distract by any means.
No.
It just wasn't like so for example, My Neighbor Totoro, like the music in that is so key to the movie. It's a very front seat in that
That's on
movie.
our list.
Yeah.
So we'll be watching
And that one's got an old lady with a wart on her face.
What?
Yeah.
I don't remember the old lady characters as much.
that
I mean,
one's on
how
our
can you
list.
think of a character other than Totoro in Totoro? Like, that's the only thing that comes to mind.
I'm pretty sure there's a cat bus.
Oh, that's also a great character.
We'll get to that movie eventually.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, so I don't know, some of the tropes of Miyazaki of Ghibli films,
Ghibli.
You can say however you want. You're fine. You're fine.
Giblet films.
Ghibli films.
I appreciate the tropes. I find them endearing. I don't know that I'd say that I like them, but I don't know where I'm going with that. Like, yeah, maybe I do like them. I find them endearing. I find them endearing for sure. But I also like kind of roll my eyes. I just do that with tropes in general, I guess.
In a podcast about biases, I thought coming on here, I was like, I don't know if we picked the right movie. Like, I feel like I'm too biased. Like, I'm just kind of steamrolling all of your opinions of like, you have to believe this movie is the best thing in the world, or else you're wrong.
No, you everything you've said is welcome, and we are glad you're here. Yeah, no, it's.
I just acknowledge my extreme bias towards Miyazaki films.
I think the first step in discussing biases is to acknowledge your own.
Yeah.
So this is not so much a bias in the film or anything like that, but those grass ponchos they're wearing are called minos or minos. I don't know how to
like the
pronounce
cape type thing.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And they're made from the stalks of rice plants, and they were originally designed to be like raincoats. That was their main function for them, but they were also effective as ghillie suits. That's all I have to say about that. I just saw them. I'm like, what are those things? Is that like to keep them warm, or is it a disguise? So what is that? So, and that's what it is: ghillie suit and raincoat.
Maybe you'll have some insight on this, Cassie. The princess, San or San? San? San?
Sally.
I honestly can't remember. I think it's San.
It's Princess Mononoke.
Right. Just call her Mononoke.
She was wearing a shawl, whatever the word is, of a wolf cub.
Oh yeah. I have this here too.
So like, she's not a wolf.
She's
which
wearing a wolf
means
pelt.
A wolf, pelt. There's the word.
Yeah.
Come on, Jeff. She's obviously pro-wolf, but some wolf had to die
Anti-wolf.
for her to be clothed.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something there about that?
That's
Like,
I didn't
or-
pick that up. That's
'cause,
so
like,
fun.
I also
like-
had that. I was
Because
like,
so she's obviously she's not going to kill one of her own,
right.
but like there was a wolf that died. So like, is there symbolic? Like, is it just merely for the symbolic that she's part of the wolf tribe? Like,
That's so fun.
like are we supposed to look deeper into that, or just assume that she's a wolf?
I can't imagine the animators considered that. I think they just wanted her to look more like a wolf. You've seen where like you can get your pet's ashes like hardened into a crystal or something and wear it on a necklace. Like I would see it as something like that. It's a respectful way to honor maybe a sibling that has passed before.
Gotcha, yeah, I did. Yeah, I definitely didn't see it as anything. I was like, oh, she killed one of her own. Like she had to kill one to be one. But like, I was like, she's.
Or maybe they just shed so much that she just like wove it together and made herself a coat. Yeah. Have you seen the cat fur? You can felt cat fur.
I I find that incredibly disgusting, but I've seen that.
So many people have
sounds
sent
real
that to me
gross.
because I've done a lot of textile work with classes and stuff. They're just like, oh, I mean, yeah, you just brush your cats, you take all the fur, and then you felt it together, and you can create like little felt sculptures of your cats.
That's kind of gross.
It's gross but fun all at the same time.
So something that I thought of while watching this movie, that is kind of like a minor thing in it. It's not even really a theme. If anything, it might be an homage. Have either of you read The Jungle Book
No.
by Rudyard Kipling? So
Nope.
in it, and it doesn't make it into the cartoon movie. It makes it in somewhat to the live action.
The Jon Favreau Jungle Book.
Is this concept that all of the different animals in the jungle are their own communities with their own hierarchies, and that they have like their own poems of like that kind of define who they are. And one thing that we see in Princess Mononoke is that all of the apes are a tribe, and that they have the gorilla spirit as their, and then we have the boars and the wolves, and we see the mice kind of acting in unison, so presumably there's a mice spirit as well. And there's this interesting concept that's touched on but not really explored. I don't know how authentic it is to Japanese mythology, but it's in the movie anyway, is that the strength of the spirit is how intelligent and strong that animal tribe is. Because they say like the boar spirit is talking about how, you know, with every generation they're getting weaker and dumber, and soon they'll just be squealing game for humans to hunt. And also that was an interesting mirroring of in the Amishi village, where the guy says every generation we're getting weaker and fewer in number. So there's a really interesting parallel there. But I just saw in that kind of somewhat of an homage to the Jungle Book of like, in the Jungle Book, the wolves are a tribe, and the elephants are a tribe, and the monkeys are a tribe, and King Louis, of course, is king of the monkeys.
What would you say are the bare necessities for that tribe to survive?
Probably.
He's not going
He's not. You did. It went right over your head. I was just trying to
probably
make a Jungle
prickly
Book.
pear.
Prickly pear.
If you eat a palm or prickly pear, you don't use your raw paw. You better beware.
The Boar necessities.
Yeah, no, I got
It's
it.
the prequel to the Boar Identity.
Bored identity.
The Boar Identity. All these movies are connected.
Yeah.
No, it's very interesting. I actually did not know the Jungle Book was based on a book.
Yeah, by Rudyard Kipling.
Okay, I know. As funny as that sounds, I just assumed it was a story.
Oddly enough, the book is just called The Jungle.
The Jungle, yeah.
But the
Wait, is it
movie
really?
wanted to
No,
clarify.
no.
Oh, you got me. I
No,
deserve
The
that.
Jungle is
Okay.
a book about the industrialization of food production in America.
That's the dude that did. That's Orwell, right?
No.
Oh, okay. The 1984 guy, George Orwell. Who did
Upton Sinclair wrote
That's
The
not a real
Jungle.
name.
And it was supposed to expose the inhuman conditions of factory workers in meat production in America and make people sympathetic to the workers. Instead, readers were absolutely disgusted by the conditions of the factories and wanted better regulation on the quality of meats. so Upton Sinclair like had net positive effect, but not in the area that he wanted, and was pretty frustrated by it.
So he started certified Angus beef.
Yeah,
He started.
that's him.
That's him.
He started certified Angus.
Yeah. No, that's not a fact.
Not a fact.
Not a fact.
Fake facts with Jeff.
Yeah. It's our new series.
I have here in the notes, and I don't know what inspired it, but I wrote in the notes a quote from Murray Rothbard: "No action can be virtuous unless it is freely chosen." And I don't know what in that movie made me think of that.
Say that again.
So Murray Rothbard said, "No action can be virtuous unless it is freely chosen."
Okay.
And I don't know what it was in this movie that reminded me of that quote, and so I wrote it.
I don't know. I feel like Eboshi's actions were kind of forced at the end. Like I don't think she ever chose peace. It was kind of forced upon her.
Sure.
I don't know if that's it or not.
It might have been. Yeah.
But
Yes.
Ashitaka was very, I think, would very much live within that statement of like, there was never a time where he was acting altruistically or selfishly or, you know, like I feel like that works better for him than, maybe I'm wrong, but crickets.
Yeah. No, you're right though. With Mononoke, she did not have a say in her virtuous actions. Like those decisions.
Mononoke
were made
or
for her.
Eboshi?
Eboshi.
Eboshi.
Yeah, I said Mononoke. I meant Eboshi.
That's
You said
the movie we're
Eboshi,
talking
I did.
and I misquoted.
You're
Is there
fine.
anybody else in the show that or in the movie that does something that could be perceived as virtuous, but only out of necessity?
I mean, at the
Oh.
end, the old guy hands the head over.
Yeah.
Well, and at the beginning, that guy offers a gold nugget.
Yeah.
Like, at the
Hey,
time,
that's
like,
not money.
well, at the beginning, you're
I
like,
got
oh, he's
so
gonna
triggered.
help him out. But then at the end, it's like, no, he's got some of his own.
He's wily.
He's wild. Yeah, that was also one of those characters. Like, I don't know if I can trust you.
Yeah. I thought, just the gold bug in me was so triggered. He hands her a piece of gold. She says, that's not money. And I was like, no, it is. That's money. Let me explain how money works. And the guy comes over. He's like, you're right. It's not money. It's better. It's gold. Confirm all my biases, please. Right into my veins.
I'm gonna make a bold statement here too.
Please do.
Those cute little forest.
Oh, I wrote it
sprites,
down.
I think
Kodama.
they're way cuter than like Grogu or something like that. Like when you know how like some character or movie things can have like these cute characters that would be like
What's a Grogu?
from Star Wars.
Sorry.
The Mandalorian.
No, you're fine. Baby Yoda.
Okay.
Which Star Wars has a lot to think when it comes to Japanese entertainment and stuff like. But yeah, when I first time I saw that little sprite, I'm like, oh, that's adorable. I want
Little
one.
butts.
I want one. so they're
cute.
creepy.
No.
The way their
Also-
heads.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, man.
My favorite part with the sprites is when he's trying to carry the unconscious man and he's struggling to get over that one tree.
Oh, yeah.
And so then they're all going past him, giving each other piggyback rides.
They're
Yeah.
just like
So
mimicking
funny.
him. Oh, it's
Yeah.
so cute.
I think that's
Because
one
they
of the
did that in
cutest little
Spirited Away
characters.
too. Oh, Miyazaki's
Yeah, they
so
do.
good at cute characters. But when what were
And
they
gross
mimicking?
characters.
They were mimicking something in Spirited Away. The crushing the spirit, the soot spirits.
Yeah.
When Sen is trying
That's
to
right.
smush the smush spirits.
It's the
and
hamster.
and the little mouse. Oh my gosh, he does it for her. And then like the little bird like celebrates with him. And oh my gosh, it's so cute.
Yeah.
Sorry.
He does cute really well. He does gross really well. He does tense really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really gifted animator and storyteller.
And yeah, writer. I actually, while we're on the topic, I have a note here about Star Wars. The creative team of Star Wars
I didn't sign up for this movie.
for the Clone Wars and the Clone Wars movie and Rebels, San Mononoke was the inspiration of Ahsoka Tano.
Really?
I have a friend that cosplays as Ahsoka. I know that one.
This is according.
I think I've met her.
This
Yes,
is according
I have.
to IMDb. So I mean, take it for what you want. Like, I didn't come up with this fact, but like Mononoke is at least cited here the inspiration for Ahsoka Tano.
That makes sense. I can see it.
Spiritual connection to nature and life, as well as their fighting and movement style. It says they're very similar. They obviously look drastically different, but yeah, that's a fun fact there. Whether it's true or not, I hope it's true. Star Wars.
You know, that is an interesting parallel that Princess Mononoke has with Star Wars. I wonder what similarities it shares with another film. Before we
see.
consult AI.
We were talking about violence, rage. I think that's easy enough.
Yeah. And retributive violence for sure. I still don't know if I'm nailing that word.
You'll get it.
But there is a lot in A Clockwork Orange of revenge and escalated violence and blowback.
Yeah, we did it.
Well, I think we should start landing this plane.
I will say, I've got a joke here, whether you want to use it or not. But in light of current events here in America, we're going to be doing the movie Up next week because of balloons.
The 2-week media cycle, nobody will even get that joke by the time this episode airs.
And it doesn't even work because we're not doing Up next week,
We're
or
Is it in
anytime
the top
soon.
250?
I think Up is.
Really?
Up is in the top 250. Yeah.
I will look.
But I was just like, I've got to incorporate balloons and sky somehow in this episode. But the landing wasn't great.
Kind of blew up on trajectory. Okay, so let's go through our wrap-up questions.
Yes. First of all, Cassie, this has been great. I'm going to go through all the questions and we'll go around just because everyone here is familiar with it. And if you're listening, I'm assuming you're not listening to this episode first. Maybe you are.
If you are, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you for making it to the end.
But yeah, we ask the same questions every episode about the movie, and then
you're looking at your notes. You came prepared for this.
I'm checking to make sure I got everything. I think I did.
Oh yeah. Do you have any final thoughts? Yeah, before I get to those questions. So the questions are: would you recommend it? Would you change the rating? It's PG-13. Has it aged well? And would this be in your personal top 250? Which I know that last one's vague, but it's just to be redundant in the fact that these are all from the 250. So, Cassie.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about this movie? How would you sum up this movie and answer those questions?
Can you give me one question at a time?
Yes. What is your social security card number? No. Okay. So would you recommend this movie?
I think I've made that clear.
Yeah. Pretty evident. Nelson, would you?
I think I would, yeah.
Yeah. Same here. I would too. Moving on. Would you guys change the rating? This one's PG-13.
I had my wife watch it with my kids, all of which... So that was basically... I made an executive decision to make it PG. And based on feedback from my wife, it does not work as PG.
No.
I would agree with that.
Stick with a 13.
Yeah.
The violence is not graphic, but limbs are severed and stuff.
Multiple
There's also
times.
talk of brothels.
And that was the big one. Jen's like, you ready to explain to Sophia what a brothel is?
Yeah,
I
I'm
was
sure
like,
she
if
asked.
she asks.
What's that word?
She didn't ask, so I don't have to explain
Really?
it just yet, but
It's coming.
it's coming.
Has it aged well?
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
It being a period piece really helps, and I don't think hand-drawn animation will ever go out of style.
I agree.
Especially Ghibli. And I think the themes are very universal, and those themes are never going to go away as well.
For sure.
Yeah. No, I agree with all that. And then last question, would this be in your top 250?
Every Ghibli film is. I can't help it.
Do you know how many films in the
Porco
Ghibli
Rosso?
collection are there?
Yeah, even Porco Rosso. I'd say all of them. Maybe not Ponyo. That's the one that I was like, eh.
Yeah, those are the two that people are like,
How many films
like
total
Porco
are
Rosso.
there?
Huh?
How many official films are there?
at least 3.
I can't give you the number because there are a lot that are in the studio that are not Miyazaki, right? That we've said that it's more his partner that made those rather than him. But this, it just turns out quality films all over the place.
You've seen everyone.
I want to say, I think so, because I just got HBO Max this year because all of the Ghibli films are on it, and I was like, you know what, I need to make sure I've seen every single one of those, and I think I got to it. I think I got to the end.
I'm gonna list them. I'm gonna read them off. You say yes or no.
Okay, fun.
Castle in the Sky.
Yes.
Grave for Fireflies.
Yes.
My Neighbor Totoro.
Yes.
Kiki's Delivery Service.
Yes.
Only Yesterday.
No.
Porco Rosso.
Yes.
Ocean Waves.
No.
Pompoco.
No.
I've seen Pompoco.
I don't know
fine.
that one.
Whisper of the Heart.
Yes.
Princess Mononoke.
Yes.
My Neighbors the Yamadas.
Oh, no.
Spirited Away.
Yes.
Cat Returns.
Yes.
Howl's Moving Castle.
Yes.
Tales from Earthsea.
No.
That's actually based off of a European book. Ponyo.
Yes.
Arietti.
No.
From Up on Poppy Hill.
No.
The Wind Rises.
Yes.
The Tale of Princess Kaguya.
No.
When Marnie Was There.
Yes.
The Red Turtle.
No.
Earwig and the Witch.
No.
That one came out in 2020.
Okay.
And How Do You Live, which comes out this year.
Yeah, so I think most of the ones I said no to are the ones that are not just Miyazaki.
That's correct.
Yeah.
You've seen a majority. You've seen, yeah. That's a lot.
I honestly need to go through the rest of them because even if it's not Miyazaki, I'd say I still am loyal to the company. Yeah. So I should support them and see the rest
loyalty.
of them. But they're so
Powerful
good. They're so. Top ones: Spirited Away, Totoro, Howl's Moving Castle, Mononoke.
Yeah. Those are all on top 250. So I'm excited to go through those.
When we did Spirited Away, we talked about how many were. There's I think every single one of the Miyazaki only films were in the top 250. Mm-hmm. Like a pitched a no hitter.
Ponyo's not.
Like, personal favorite is Howl's Moving Castle because I am a cliche, I guess, and it has the most overt romance. The rest of his films might have love themes, but they don't really have romantic tones. Howl's Moving Castle is definitely a romance, and it makes me happy.
Yeah, it's very much a romance.
It's so cute.
Pompoco, I saw once a couple years ago. From memory, it's about a bunch of raccoons taking over a town.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Cat Returns is so good. Cat Returns is great. You should, yeah.
Kiki's Delivery Service is not in the top 250. Is that one worth watching? Is that
it's cute. I wouldn't say the themes are as exciting as conceptually all his other films are.
It's much more a kid's movie.
Yeah.
Having watched these two, like I would definitely, outside of the podcast, I'd be willing to watch more of these just for entertainment purposes. I've really enjoyed these.
And if you don't have HBO Max, you can borrow my DVDs.
Yeah.
Is this to every one of the listeners?
If you know me and you don't have HBO Max, you can borrow my DVDs.
Just email Cassie at www.cassie.
That reminds me.
We'll get there.
Okay.
Jeff's
on the ball.
That's my email.
I'm on a chair. I'm on a boat.
Jeff's producing this so hard right now.
I need to get a hat. You've got a hat on, Nelson. Does it say producer on it?
Do you have lice?
I do now.
You beat me to my punchline.
So yeah, any other thoughts before we close out this movie? Before we get into just a couple more things we have to land here. Yeah, I think that's it. Cassie, this has been wonderful. So speaking of you, Cassie,
hello.
Where can our listeners find you? Is there anything you'd like to plug? If not, no pressure, but is there anything that we can point our listeners to if there's something you'd like for them to know?
Sure. If you don't know me, I stopped teaching and I am currently an artist working primarily commission-based. So if you want to see my work or order a commissioned painting or drawing from me, you can go to my website, CassieSinchok.com.
Linked below.
My name is spelled weird. So if you don't want to look at the link, it's CassieSinchok.com. You can also find Cassy Sinchok Art on Facebook and Instagram. But the website will also get you there. So that's me.
Awesome. Yeah. Nelson and I had the privilege of sharing the stage with you a couple times throughout the year on our worship team. So it's been fun to be able to talk to you. And Nelson, you can share this better than I. You were the first one that reached out when we started the podcast.
That's right.
Right?
Wow. Number one fan.
Number one fan.
And so from the very beginning, we're like, we need to have Cassie on. And so we're very glad to finally have you here. And I do not believe this will be the last time.
I mean, you guys made this podcast specifically for me, right? It's about movies and it's about critiquing things, which are like my number one things.
Jeff and I needed to fill out our schedules. And we're like, well, what would Cassie specifically appreciate?
Like this podcast was absolutely made for me. I love talking about biases, critical thinking. Like that's my education background. But then I love talking about film and movies. That's my art background. So
we're definitely going to have you on for all the Star Wars movies because you're
such a big fan.
If you want to get a first experience, fresh eyes.
But no, this has been great. It's been good conversation. I've really enjoyed these past two movies and just the conversation that comes out of them. This has been really fun.
And join us again in 2 weeks for Citizen Kane with special guest Zach.
That's so exciting.
Yes, very exciting. So I believe that's it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening. Find us online on social media. It's all linked below.
And have a wonderful evening or day, depending on when you're listening to this.
But not morning.
Yeah, not morning. I hope it's just mediocre.
Thanks again for coming, Cass.
Yeah.
Adios, Jefe.
Adios, muchacho. Thanks for listening. We had a great time putting this together for you.
To join the conversation, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Silver Screen Biases.
And on Twitter at Screen Biases.
We believe in value for value, so if you found value in our show, we ask you to consider supporting us.
Links to our social media and support can be found in the show notes.